Good morning and welcome to the Hibs Observer Monday debrief with myself, Liam Bryce, joined for the second week in a row by Craig Nisbet, as you perhaps may better know on Twitter as 9125 Analysis, to look back over Hibs' 2-1 defeat to St Johnstone at Easter Road on Saturday. A really poor result for Nick Montgomery's side, which makes chances of making the top six not quite over at this point, but certainly well out of Hibs' hands, needing not just one but several favours, and obviously to take care of Motherwell next week. But we'll get to all that as we go through the game. Craig, first of all, thanks again for joining us. I promise we'll get you on to analyse a Hibs victory at some point, but unfortunately today's not that promise. Day. You can hold me to it, honestly. Yeah. As I said, if any of you have joined us last week, we're just going to have a look at the game from a kind of more tactical perspective. As I've said before, Craig does some really good stuff on Twitter, and he's also provided some really good in-depth tactical articles as well for us. So we'll just break down the game as it transpired, and see if we can perhaps salvage any positives from what was, not a great day for Hibs. First of all, though, I just need to take a quick word for our sponsors. We are thrilled to have Weissman, a global leader in the boiler industry, known for their top-notch German engineering, sponsor our podcast. They've teamed up with Scotland's very own award-winning installation team, MPH Boilers, making this a perfect match right here in Scotland. Weissman's boilers are engineered to deliver not just warmth, but unparalleled efficiency and reliability. It's cutting-edge technology designed to save you on energy bills and reduce emissions. And paired with MPH Boilers, you're getting service from the best in the business. It's a local team that's committed to excellence and customer satisfaction. When you choose a Weissman boiler installed by MPH Boilers, you'll also get a free internet controller, making it a breeze to manage your heating, anytime, anywhere. And you'll also get the first year's service free, because for them, it's all about giving you some peace of mind and making sure you're looked after. So this is your chance to get world-class engineering with local expert service. Weissman and MPH Boilers, it's a match made in Scotland. Make sure to check them out and take the first step towards a warmer, more efficient home. So on to Saturday's action. As I said, a 2-1 defeat for Hibs. Really quite damaging one in terms of kind of league aspirations, getting into that top six. But if we could just rewind to the moment the team sheet came out, Craig, what was your take on the starting 11 and the setup? Obviously, I think the kind of big talking point from when the team sheet came out was the fact that Ellie Yuan had dropped to the bench and Martin Boyle came back in. So what were your immediate thoughts when you saw the lineup, and then how do you think it played out on the pitch?
Yeah, I thought it was really harsh on Yuan. 4 assists in his last 3 games, and quite clearly him and Mizian linking up really, really well together. So I thought it was a bit of a bold call. I mean, it should never really be a bold call putting Martin Boyle back in your starting 11, but I think having watched Yuan recently, he was definitely finding a good bit of form. I did think a big call from Nick Montgomery, and I suppose if you're having somebody come off the bench, it could be a 50-50 between who would be better to come off in Yuan and Boyle. But yeah, I thought that was a wee bit harsh on him. And then the only other thing, I kind of thought that home to St Johnstone, they were going to, obviously, they set up in a sort of 5-3-1-1 or 5-3-2, so you're going to need to break them down. I did wonder if he would maybe take Triantis out of the team and maybe put in Mariah Welsh from the start, who came on and did well against Rangers, or even Dylan Levitt, just somebody with maybe a better range of forward passing to break it down. But, he obviously stuck with Triantis playing in there. So probably not too many surprises, but apart from the Boyle decision, obviously. And then St Johnstone, I mean, yeah, like I said, they you know how they're going to set up. It's a Craig Levein team, so but what they did, they set themselves up in that formation, and with Clark and Sidibe, they sort of sat off and they only really started to press. They left Fish and Rocky on the ball, And maybe if we had played it forward and it came back, then they triggered their press, and especially when the ball went wide, that's when they were really, really aggressive, kind of forcing us back and then forcing us long. And we don't really have the height at the top end of the pitch especially to combat the sort of size of centre halves they have. So I don't think that would have been any surprise to Montgomery and the team. I'm sure they knew they were going to set up like that. But we really made it difficult for ourselves, I thought, throughout the game. And I think you and Patrick maybe covered it just after the game. I really thought that the tempo, especially in the first half, was just far too slow and really sloppy. And I think that contributed to just an overall really poor performance.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, as you say there, we did touch on the tempo of the game immediately afterwards. And I think that perhaps, sort of maybe ties into what you were saying there about perhaps being surprised that Triantis started over maybe, say, Mariah Welsh or Levitt in a game like this. I mean, I like Triantis in that kind of holding role. He's done it. I think he's shown that he can certainly do a job there. He is quite comfortable on the ball. He's got that kind of defensive instinct about him as well. But I think in that particular game where you are going to dominate the vast majority of territory and possession, and you need a bit of invention that you perhaps get for Dylan Levitt, or if you just need that kind of injection of tempo, really, as I said, that you get with Mariah Welsh, then I thought perhaps maybe that could have been a better option against a side who I know they eventually caught Hibs on the counter, but kind of didn't really. I mean, especially in that first half, I even seen a few St Johnstone fans on Twitter when I was just kind of scrolling through the game at half time, just basically saying, kind of what are we doing here? This needs to be better, even from our perspective. So I think, as you said, the tempo was the main issue. I felt there was just a kind of lack of urgency. And then, I mean, so you maybe need to credit St Johnstone as well, because the shape that they sat into and the way they kind of pressed Hibs, as you say, is when it went into the wide areas. I think when it went to Cadden especially, there was somebody right on top of them within kind of moments, and then it's exactly what they wanted. It either goes back to Rocky and Fish and they're just recycling it, or Hibs are forced to go along where, Adam Lafondra, as clever as he can be and kind of using his body and kind of timing his jumps in there, it's not the kind of game you want to be playing. So the first half, I think, I don't know for you, but it just became a real stalemate, didn't it? I felt.
Yeah, I think like on Triantis as well. Like, I'm a big fan, and I think he certainly has shown in that deeper position. He's also pretty good on the ball as well. I kind of felt the same sometimes when whoever was paired up with Newell, whether it was maybe Jago and other things like that before. Newell could do that job. Newell could probably get in there, move the ball, and I think that's where you maybe want another player who can maybe play slightly further forward or inject a bit of life in things, because even against the St Johnstone side, like, you do, to break down like a 5-3-2, to break down that setup, you are going to recycle the ball from left to right. It's going to happen. And what you need is those little moments just when a gap appears, somebody steps out and you need the ball put through. And I just felt like we couldn't find our forward players quick enough. And then when we did, they were normally under a lot of pressure, as you said, and it was just leading to turnovers. And yeah, it just meant, I mean, the first half, there was a lot of decent attacks down our left. I think we were putting the ball out to the right, Cadden pressured, it was going back, and we were trying to switch the play as quick as we could to get Obita and Mizian on the ball. But it just happened like too little. The other thing I thought maybe as well, and we're actually seeing Rangers do it against us last weekend, was I was kind of crying out for maybe Newell or Triantis to just drop into the defence and push Rocky or Fish wider and create like a bit of a back three. So at least if we were moving the ball, maybe not so much Rocky doing that, but if Newell went onto the left-hand side just to drive out and cause St Johnstone a different problem. And I certainly felt, having been at the game and then re-watching it, we didn't really change up our attack and what we were doing. And it just meant that St Johnstone fell into a pattern of defending. We fell into a pattern of attacks. And it just, as you said, it just became a bit of a stalemate.
Yeah, not a classic first half. I think we should maybe touch on the fact, though, as not great as it was. Do you think Hibs should have had a penalty for the when Marcondes and Mitov came together? Shall we say?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, at the time, I thought it was going to get reviewed and we were going to get it. And having watched it back a few times as well, I'm really struggling to see why it wasn't. I don't think if Mitov does make contact on the ball, it's very, very slight. It's really, really slight contact, if any. And he comes out and it's, Emiliano takes a punch in the face, but also a knee fairly high up in the ribs as well. And when I look back at some of the penalties that we've conceded recently, I'm going to pick on Triantis here a little bit because it seems to be him, but if you think back to his one, even just last weekend, he's jumped for the ball. He's not, he's missed it. He's made contact with Suter, penalty. And going back to his first one, I think against Celtic, where, again, he jumped for it and he's mistimed it and he ended up, I think, clashing with Alistair Johnson and it was a penalty. I don't really see how any of those are different from what happened with Mitov, to be honest. So I'm really struggling to see why it wasn't given to VAR. And I think if it was, it then would have been a penalty.
Yeah, if the referee maybe been given a chance to take a second look at it. But I think it's just the kind of the precedent that's maybe been set with other incidents, really. Like I think you can maybe debate the merits of, if you have these sort of comings together in the box, should it be a penalty? I think that's a whole kind of other debate. But if you're kind of seeing them quite consistently given in other games involving Hibs and going against, then I can certainly understand why people are frustrated and obviously a bit baffled that when one such as Saturday's occurs, then the referee is just waving play on, VAR's not getting involved. So it was definitely a strange one, and I think the St Johnstone keeper, obviously he came in to do his post match. And he was asked about it, and he was just he was immediately, oh no chance, absolutely no way. Very robustly defending himself, perhaps overcompensating a wee bit. I don't know if there was maybe a wee bit of guilt underlying in his tone, but obviously it's typical goalies, isn't it? They're not going to come out and say, that was definitely a penalty, I've got away with one there. So I suppose you need to say fair play to him for that, but I do think it was a penalty, and Hibs have been pretty hard done by there. And as poor as the first half was, it becomes a different game at that stage, though, if Hibs do get their noses in front heading into half time, especially with the game plan St Johnstone had turned up with. They would maybe perhaps be forced to think about doing something different. So it's a pivotal moment in the game. I'm not excusing, using it as an excuse, for what then followed, because Hibs didn't cover themselves in any glory defensively in that second half. Because the first goal, it's a poor one to concede. It's far too easy. I think considering St Johnstone hadn't really got much of a sniff in terms of getting in behind on the counter like that in the first half. I don't know. It's a poor one. It's the kind of one that will drive a manager crazy because it's just a simple turnover, one ball in behind, and to be fair, good run and finish from Sidibe. But I think from a Hibs perspective, it's a pretty frustrating one for the manager, that, isn't it?
Yeah, in the first half, I think there was only maybe twice I thought Sidibe, he kind of got the run on Fish a little bit, and I think he cut inside and had a deflected shot, and obviously, but yeah, you're right, it was few and far between, and I think that came from maybe a Hibs like turning the ball over rather than St Johnstone winning it and hitting us on the counter.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously, I thought Fish did struggle in the first half, and then it was quite a surprise to see him subbed off, and I think the manager said it was with illness. Which is and obviously that puts Triantis back and puts Mariah Welsh in midfield, which is what I said at the top of the show. That's maybe something they should have started with. But the goal, we're actually in quite a good attacking position. And then I think it's just Joe Newell just overruns it or just loses a little bit of control. And I think we'll go straight into Matt Smith. And to be fair, he sort of takes one touch, looks up, and it's a really, really good ball down the channel. I think it's really poor from both Rocky and Triantis. If you see it back, Triantis tries to play offside. He's looking along the line. He's kind of got a good view of it, and for some reason he just doesn't step up. I think he's trying to time it right with Rocky to make sure they're not caught, but because he then stops play offside, Sidibe then has the extra pace and Triantis is recovering, but he just can't get there. And as you said there from Sidibe, it's a cracking finish. But it's a really, really poor goal to lose. Really poor.
Yeah, I think it's kind of as well as that kind of happens sometimes in centre backs. I think that is was that. I mean, could correct me if I'm wrong. Was that maybe the first time it's been Triantis and Rocky at the back? I would need to double check that. My memory is
Yeah,
notoriously awful. But is it one of those ones where there's a half-time change being made, and obviously can't do anything about it? It's enforced. Will Fish is taken out. He's got to come off. But then there's just maybe that wee bit of lack of cohesion between the two guys who are now paired. I think you see it kind of various different levels. Changes in centre halves, enforced changes can be one of the most dangerous things and kind of throwing a team off kilter. So there's maybe a bit of that involved as well. But it was just, I mean, as you say, though, it's a great finish. To be fair to Sidibe, I mean, it's not the easiest because he's still coming in at an angle. David Marshall's come out to close him down, and he still managed to smash it past them. But I mean, from there, it kind of, I don't know if we maybe suggested in our kind of instant video after the game on Saturday that sort of sparked Hibs into life a wee bit. It was maybe kind of fueled by a sense of kind of that things were getting a wee bit desperate, kind of knowing that this was going to be a must-win game. But it did seem to lift it a wee bit afterwards. Did you think? And then, I mean, it's when the goal does come. Sorry, it is very well worked.
yeah, yeah. I certainly think that after that, obviously the crowd started to turn a little bit, and yeah, they had to lift it. And the goal, our equaliser, is a good goal. I actually kind of forgot how it kind of came quite quick after St Johnstone's goal. There's not a lot of time between it, but yeah, it's Mariah Welsh. It's a really good interception that I think that's why you would want somebody like him in there, and even Levitt as well. We discussed before that his defensive stats are actually better than maybe people think, but interceptions and stuff are really important. And Mariah Welsh next set, he gets a nice wee 1-2 with Emiliano, rides a couple of challenges in the midfield, could have been brought down, I think, just as he's kind of driving into the St Johnstone half. And obviously, once he plays the ball out to Mizian, it's good feet. It's a decent shot. Mitov actually makes quite a good save, actually, to kind of push the ball away from any deflections. But you've got to give Cadden huge credit, because he starts, that run he makes to get in for that finish is incredible, because he starts off behind Mariah Welsh, and as the play progresses, you can just see it's a really consistent run, and he gets into a really good area. And actually, I think the composure he shows to just pop it into the bottom corner, it's a great finish. And I think from there was a real change, and that's when we started to have a wee collection of really, really good chances, but obviously we were unable to put another one in.
Yeah, so what do you think? Was it that sense of urgency and tempo that was maybe injected into the play after that period? Do you think that was the main difference between that wee spell and what we saw in the first half?
I think there's probably a bit of that. I think as well, when St Johnstone get the goal, they've got what they've come for. They've got right, we've hit the goal, we're 1-0 up. Maybe naturally they start to drop off a little bit more, and maybe aren't looking to counter as much. So it gives us a chance to move the ball around a little bit better. But I think after Cadden's goal, we had a really good set of chances with, we managed to get the ball wide. Obita put a great ball in, and Lafondra had a really lovely flick at the front post that Mitov made a cracking save from. And I think from that, Rocky has a header, just goes wide of the post as well. So I think at that point, certainly I was feeling like, right, it's just going to be a matter of time, whilst also still being very cautious of St Johnstone on the counter-attack. But, we mentioned it in the Rangers game last week. I felt, after Lafondra has that chance, he gets subbed a couple of minutes later. And again, I'm not sure if it's injury or looking after him, or what it is, but it was similar time he came off against Rangers, around about 60 minutes. And listen, I don't think he had a particularly great game up until that point against St Johnstone. I think some of his hold-up play was sloppier than usual, and some of his final pass, but I don't think that was just him. And I did find it strange, when you need a goal and you're probably going to be peppering the St Johnstone box in the latter part of the game, that you would take him off, and again doing that, getting Yuan on's fine, but then moving Mizian into the middle again, I just don't think it works. And then I sort of felt from then on it was, that's where and Emiliano, sorry, as well, I didn't think he was having a particularly great game as well in terms of creating anything. So I just sort of felt when that sub went, I feel like we lost a little bit in and around the penalty box. But I'm not sure. I mean, I feel like I'm like Team Lafondra here. I'm always championing for him to stay on longer than 60 minutes. But I don't know. What's your thoughts? Like, do you think we should have kept him on and maybe made it? I think I'd noted down that I maybe actually would have taken Emiliano off. And then just allowed Mizian to kind of roam as a bit of a 10 and a sort of free roll almost, but left Lafondra through the middle.
Yeah, I think for me, it's maybe less. I think less about Lafondra as such, and more about what you do with Mizian in that situation. I feel like he is, as you can allude to there, he is much more effective when he's got that bit of license, whether it's on the left or maybe coming into central areas, when he's got that just kind of bit of freedom to roam and pick up pockets, because he is so good at that. He knows when to hold his width. He knows when to maybe drift into that inside pocket and pick up the ball in there. I need to maybe look at this, the numbers and stuff from the game in a bit more detail. But I do just feel he becomes. I know he had a couple of chances when he went into a central area, but I feel like in general he seems less involved in the game, because he then has to become the focal point. He doesn't quite have the kind of the freedom to pick up whatever space he sees fit at that point. Somebody's got to provide that focal point, and that becomes his role at that point. I just don't think he quite has the same influence on the game. So I think changes for me, I mean, I kind of agree that I don't think they quite worked on Saturday, and I think at the moment, with the form that he's in, the clear talent that he has, I think unless he's you're having to take him off for whatever reason, I would always trying to play to his absolute strengths, which I think he's just best at, for me, in my opinion, on that left side, drifting into areas when he gets running from deep. I think he's so good at that as well, when he can pick the ball maybe up midway inside an opponent's half and get turned and run. Run's not a word. Get turned and running at people. So yeah, for me, it didn't quite pan out. I think the way that the manager was perhaps hoping afterwards. But that being said, he did have a few chances.
Yeah.
But for me, I do prefer him on that left side. I think he is much more effective there, and I think Hibs do lose. I mean, I know you are bringing on Yuan, who is, his contribution over the past several weeks has been, in terms of numbers, has been really good. So it's, there is the argument that he should then be able to step into that role. But I just think Mizian's got that extra something at the moment, as I said. But even then, even with that, I still felt like the momentum was with Hibs at that point. You did maybe feel like there was a goal coming, but it then becomes almost that different context, but similar story to the previous week at Ibrox. Working so hard to get yourself back into the game and then conceding again a poor goal. I mean, I think I don't think it's a goal that'll frustrate a manager more than coming in one that comes in from a set piece. And it was just too simple and too easy for St Johnstone, that second goal, I felt.
Yeah, yeah, and going back to your point, like Mizian did have, he had a scissor kick, he had a wee ball that I think Triantis flicked over the top and sort of he held off the man and I think made a good save from Mitov. And I think the only other chance I can really remember was I think we had a nice bit of play, and Cadden sort of whipped the ball across the 6-yard box, and actually I think it comes off McGowan and Mitov makes another good save, and then that all came just after that spell. So yeah, at that point I think, sitting in the stands, you sort of felt the goal was coming. But yeah, like set pieces, I think we had tightened up things recently, but when you watch it back, it starts back from albeit as clearance, it's hard, maybe with the wind and stuff, not being on the pitch itself, but you could see it was having an impact. But he sort of slices it out for a corner when he probably could, clear it up the pitch. And when you watch it back, Mizian, he's got Gallagher, but he's just looking at him. He's not really looking at the ball. He's trying to sort of wrestle for the body position. And actually, as the ball comes in, it sort of, Triantis kind of runs out, jumps, misses the ball, And Gallagher, I mean, he doesn't get great contact on it, but he gets enough, and it just obviously bounces in past Marshall. But it's really frustrating because I think if Mizian just looks for the ball and looks to attack the ball, I don't think Gallagher gets anywhere near it. I think Mizian's got the strength to hold him off, but yeah, he just gets caught in that moment of trying to pick up and mark and just doesn't focus enough attention on the ball. And I mean, that was a real sucker punch at that point. And you know, as it went 2-1, I don't know about you, but I sort of felt I didn't think. I thought we could maybe get an equaliser. I could maybe 2-2. I mean, that seems to be our favourite scoreline. But I could see us doing that, but I just couldn't see us winning. I just and then we take Newell off and put Jair on, and at that point you could just see we were kind of throwing everything in the kitchen sink at the game. But after that, I don't think we really created any clear-cut openings.
No, I completely agree with you. I mean, there's always a chance that you could nick an equaliser just through sheer kind of weight of bodies in the box, just the accumulation of pressure. But I've got to agree, I couldn't see Hibs winning from that point. It felt like too big an ask. That goal is too much of a sucker punch, really, to then be able to lift yourselves again, get going again, and find your kind of your best form. It felt like the game was gone at that point, at least in terms of taking the 3 points that were sort of desperately needed. So obviously those 3 points weren't picked up on Saturday, and it does leave Hibs in a not so great, to say the least, position in terms of getting into the top 6. It's now relying on favours from other teams. Obviously Dundee host Rangers on Wednesday. Dundee big underdogs for that game, but stranger things have happened. If they spring a shock in that game, then that's it for Hibs' ambitions of getting into the top 6. Do you feel at this point that it's gone, Craig, or do you think? I know you're kind of conditioned to expect the unexpected in this league, so something completely bonkers could happen, but it is starting to feel pretty unlikely at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think you'd hope that Rangers can take care of things for us against Dundee midweek, but I think my worry is the game against Motherwell. I haven't watched the highlights of their game yesterday, and looking at Theo Bair and what he was doing to the centre halves, and thinking about Sidibe and what he was doing. I actually think that'll be a really, really tough game, and going there and getting a result. It's a very Hibs thing to do in the face of what we're going through, to turn up and get a performance and a result like that. But I think there's just a bit of a fragility to us at the moment, and I'm not quite convinced we can go there and take all 3 points. Obviously, that's what we want, and we hope that we can do that, because I think it's so important. I think for Nick Montgomery, I think it's very, very important to get into the top 6 for him personally. But I think, next Saturday is a really, really tough game to finish, just with the way, especially Motherwell's comeback on Saturday. And I just think the personnel they have and the way they play it'll be difficult for us. I think it'll be really difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be extremely difficult getting. There'll be kind of what a lift Motherwell will have got from the way that game up at Dens Park finished on Saturday as well. They're definitely the team who'll be coming into it with that bit more belief and momentum, you'd feel. And just finally to touch on, I've kind of written a few times that I feel like there's the kind of, aside from some other kind of obvious implications, but finishing in the bottom 6, and you wouldn't want to obviously tempt fate, but Hibs do seem to be kind of clear enough of the relegation battle if they finish in the bottom 6, they're probably, I mean, the likelihood is, the odds would be on that they're not going to get dragged into that unless something absolutely calamitous happens. But that then sort of creates a scenario where you're playing, to round off the season, you're playing a few games that don't have an awful lot of meaning behind them, not a lot of consequence, at least for Hibs. And I've kind of written before that I feel like there's nothing that maybe would quite diminish, kind of fan enthusiasm towards the end of a season than playing a series of games where you've not really get any great prize at the end of them. So obviously for you, being at the games, and would you feel that way? Would it struggle to kind of retain your interest between the now and the end of the season? Do you feel?
Yeah, I think it would. I even noticed on Saturday, we've got quite a loyal group of people round about us, but there was quite a few people not there. And I think if we ended up in the bottom six, yeah, I could see the attendances dipping. I mean, I think at that point, to be honest, I think for Nick Montgomery, I could see there then being a change. I think at that point the club would maybe think, right, we know we need to keep the enthusiasm going. We need to, it's going to be another rebuild in the summer. We've not got into the top six. We need to make a change there, and maybe not right at that time. Maybe it would be David Gray getting up to the end of the season or something along those lines. But I think for him, we need to win. We need to get into the top six, and even getting into the top six, I think we then need to go on and have some really big performances and big results against Hearts, against Rangers, against Celtic, in order to kind of keep that fan enthusiasm and build some positivity ahead of next season. I think if we go into that bottom six, even some of the players, there's a lot of players in those squads that will know they're probably going to be away in the summer. And players that we might not hold on to, and kind of there's a bit of like, who knows what will happen with Mizian, Emiliano, all these different types of things as well. So I would kind of worry about sort of their engagement in that towards the end of the season and things like that. And you could just see it being like a pretty long end for us. So yeah, we have to get that result and hope things go our way and get into the top six.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it is in terms of just maintaining sort of just some excitement. I mean, even if Hibs do get into the top six, it's Europe is probably still a long shot, but at least you're getting those bigger games. You're getting another derby, something with a bit of meaning behind it, and it just prevents the season from just meandering to a pretty forgettable conclusion. But yeah, I think we'll leave it there as far as this weekend goes. Thanks again to Craig for joining us in terms of content today. We'll have a piece on the website, not too long now, just kind of perhaps expanding a wee bit on some of the tactical points that we've touched on in this video. So do keep an eye out on the website for that if you want to dig into it a wee bit further. But yeah, that's all from us today. If you do like what we do, if you like these videos, if you like the sound of the content on the website, then please do pay attention to the ticker at the bottom of the screen where you can subscribe to the Hibs Observer for our current offer of just £4 for 4 months. It gets you everything from pre and post-match content, exclusive interviews and features, tactical analysis from myself, editor Patrick McPartland, and of course Craig here. And then obviously, if you are enjoying these videos, please do consider subscribing to our YouTube channel, because it does make a big difference in allowing us to keep doing what we're doing. But as far as today goes, that's all from us. We will be back again later this week to look ahead to the Motherwell game at the weekend. Craig, thanks for joining us, and you can hold me to that promise that I made at the start of the show that we will get you on for a Hibs victory as soon as we're allowed to.
I appreciate it. Hopefully this time next Monday we'll be talking about it.
Yep, here's hoping, absolutely. So folks, thank you as always for joining us, and we will catch you again very soon. Cheers.